A late-night TV giant has just been yanked off the air, not for low ratings, not for walking away, but for something he said. Jimmy Kimmel Live has been pulled indefinitely by ABC after one controversial monologue shook the industry, sparked political outrage, and set off a firestorm about free speech in America. The move has left fans stunned, critics divided, and the future of late-night television hanging by a thread. So what exactly did Kimmel say that was so explosive it forced Disney's hand? And why are some calling this the biggest censorship scandal late night has ever faced? The controversy traces back to Kimmel's monologue on September 15th. Standing under the bright studio lights, he zeroed in on the shocking death of conservative hacktivist Charlie Kirk, who had been shot while speaking at Utah Valley University just days earlier. Kimmel didn't mince words. He told his audience that supporters of former President Donald Trump, what he called the MAGA gang, were twisting the tragedy to deflect responsibility. His exact jab was that they were trying to frame the shooter as anything other than one of them. That one line was enough to light the fuse. To critics, it sounded like Kimmel was blaming an entire political movement for the killing, despite the shooter's motives not being fully clear. To his fans, it was just another example of his trademark satire, using comedy to call out hypocrisy. But no matter how you interpret it, those words instantly turned a late-night joke into a national controversy. And the reaction? It came faster and fiercer than anyone expected. The backlash didn't take long. Within 48 hours, the country's largest local broadcaster, Nexstar Media, announced it would preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live across its more than 200 ABC-affiliated stations. Their statement was blunt. They strongly objected to Kimmel's comments about Charlie Kirk and said airing the show was no longer in the public interest. In other words, Kimmel was pulled off the air in dozens of markets overnight. But it didn't stop there. Sinclair Broadcast Group, another major player, weighed in too, demanding a public apology and even financial support for Kirk's family before they'd consider bringing the program back. That kind of demand is almost unheard of in late-night television. Then came the federal pressure. FCC Chair Brendan Carr, appointed during the Trump administration, blasted Kimmel's remarks as offensive and potentially misleading. He hinted that Disney and ABC could face regulatory scrutiny if they didn't act quickly. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a late-night joke. It was a full-blown political storm with regulators, broadcasters, and Disney all caught in the middle. Kimmel's words had moved from a comedy stage to the front lines of a national debate. And the question everyone was asking was simple. Was this punishment or was it censorship? Not everyone agreed with ABC's decision. Almost immediately, free speech advocates and Kimmel's fans fired back, calling the suspension a dangerous precedent. To them, this wasn't about a tasteless joke. It was about silencing a comedian for voicing his opinion. They argued that satire has always pushed boundaries, from Johnny Carson to Jon Stewart, and that pulling a late-night host off the air sends a chilling message. Some political figures are simply off limits. Kimmel's defenders also pointed out that his comment wasn't delivered as hard news. It was part of a comedy monologue. In their eyes, holding a joke to the same standard as a newsroom broadcast sets a double standard that threatens all of late-night television. On the other hand, critics insisted this wasn't censorship at all. It was accountability. They claimed Kimmel crossed a line by politicizing a tragedy before the facts were clear, framing an entire movement in a way that could inflame tensions. For them, ABC had every right, maybe even a responsibility, to protect its stations and communities from what they called reckless commentary. The debate only got louder online. Was Jimmy Kimmel being punished for breaking the rules of comedy or for breaking the rules of politics? This isn't the first time late-night comedy has collided with politics, but the scale feels different. Just months ago, CBS abruptly canceled The Late Show with Stephen Colbert after the host blasted his own network's parent company for settling a lawsuit with Donald Trump. Critics saw that as the first warning sign that networks were no longer willing to stand behind their hosts when political heat turned up. Jimmy Kimmel himself has walked this tightrope before. Back in 2022, he admitted he was ready to quit Jimmy Kimmel Live if ABC ever tried to censor his jokes about Trump. At the time, he framed it as a matter of principle. If he couldn't speak freely, he didn't want the job. That statement feels almost prophetic now. There's also a long history of comedians being punished for crossing perceived lines. So where does this leave Jimmy Kimmel? Officially, Jimmy Kimmel Live is indefinitely off the air, a phrase that could mean weeks, months, or never. Disney and ABC are under enormous pressure from both directions. On one side, affiliates and regulators demanding accountability. On the other, fans and free speech advocates warning against censorship. If history is any guide, Kimmel may face a choice: issue a public apology to calm the outrage, or stand firm and risk losing the platform he's held for more than 2 decades. Sinclair's demand for not just an apology, but financial reparations to Kirk's family adds another layer of tension. That's not a simple sorry, that's a bargaining chip in a very public standoff. For Disney, the stakes are massive. They've already watched CBS implode with Colbert's cancellation. If Kimmel is gone too, late-night comedy could collapse into something unrecognizable, with networks unwilling to take chances and comedians afraid to push boundaries. And for viewers, it raises an even bigger question. Are we watching the slow death of political comedy on mainstream TV? What happens next could define the future of late night. Will Kimmel stage a defiant comeback or quietly bow out under pressure? Either way, the fallout from this controversy is far from over. Jimmy Kimmel has built his career on pushing boundaries, mixing humor with hard truths, and never shying away from controversy. But this time, a single monologue has sparked a storm powerful enough to silence one of late night's longest-running shows. Whether you see this as accountability or censorship, one thing is clear: the rules for comedy and for free speech on television are changing right before our eyes. So the question is, what happens when a joke isn't just a joke anymore? Is this the end of late-night hosts speaking freely about politics, or the beginning of an even bigger fight over who gets to control the national conversation? Because if Jimmy Kimmel can be pulled off the air after 2 decades, then no late-night comedian is truly safe.